At this time, I will call to order the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting for November 4th, 2024. Trustees, questions, comments, or action on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, the consent docket is approved. Takes us to item 5 on the agenda, which is to receive an annual report by MMO Partners. Consider approval of an extension agreement with MMO Partners for federal advocacy services in the amount of $79,200, to approve the associated budget amendment and authorize the general manager to sign the documents. Christy Cluck.
So we do have Mr. Pagonis here this evening to provide a presentation. He is from MMO Partners and is going to deliver their annual report. And then I will have a recommendation from staff at the conclusion of that.
Thank you, Christy.
Good evening, Chairman of the Board, Madam Chair, and trustees. My name is Kyriakos Pagonis. I'm Vice President at MMO Partners. We're a DC-based government affairs firm. Chuck Thomas is here with me tonight, the brains of the operation. Thanks, Chuck, for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, but more importantly, thank you for the opportunity to represent this utility in Washington. It's been our pleasure over the past 2 years to work with you, your excellent staff, and the delegation to bring some victories back to Stillwater. Today, we're going to go over some of the work that we've been doing on behalf of the utility in 2024. Next slide, please. Before we get into some... Oh, do I do it? Oh, sorry. Okay. Next slide for myself. Thank you. Chuck, you're here for something. Before we get into the highlights, I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of an overview. I'm sure you all are following what's going on with elections and sort of impact on Congress, et cetera. But just to give you a little bit of an overview of where we stand, post tomorrow, Congress is set to come back November 12th to gavel in session. Their top priority is really to pass a budget. We're operating under a continuing resolution that goes through December 20th. So Congress will have some decisions to make about whether or not to pass a full year FY25 budget to kick the can into next year, meaning pass another continuing resolution, which is what they did last year. So there are a number of things that the election will dictate in that regard. So a lot of this does depend on what happens tomorrow and over the next few days. The other thing there's a couple other things that are on their agenda as well. There's an emergency supplemental bill that would provide more funding to FEMA to address some of the recent natural disasters in Florida. There's also a National Defense Authorization Act, which typically gets done before the appropriations bills, but they may lump them together. And then last, there's a Water Resources Development Act bill that authorizes funding for the Corps of Engineers, which the city also has a stake in. We expect that bill, which has bipartisan support on both sides of the aisle, to really be non-controversial and hopefully gets a ride on a continuing resolution or a final spending package or the National Defense Authorization Act. So that kind of gives you a context of sort of where we are in DC when Congress comes back next week. One thing that is not on this highlight because it was an FY23 item but didn't get resolved until March was your earmark for $1 million for the system, the water system. That was included in the 23 package. It didn't get done until, actually it was FY24, my apologies. It didn't get done until March of this year, so that was done and signed into law. So $1 million for the system, for the solid contact units, which we are carrying over additional requests for more funding for that project. And that's number 2 on this item. You'll see that up there. So there's $850,000 included in the FY25 Interior Appropriations Bill to continue funding that project. That was requested by both Representative Lucas and Senator Mullen. $850,000 was included in the House bill, just to be clear. And again, that project is sort of tied into what happens with the continuing resolution or not next week and thereafter. And then $30 million, as I alluded to, is in the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. That bill, again, authorizes the Corps of Engineers to do work on projects, and we do have $30 million authorized in both the House and Senate bill, so the city and utility are in a very strong position, barring some major issue with the bill getting done. There's no issue with the project. It's more a matter of how the bill gets reconciled at this point. Again, that bill typically is done every 2 years in a bipartisan fashion. Obviously, there are no guarantees, but this is a bill that usually gets done with pretty strong support on both sides. So we feel really good about that. And then really to sort of highlight, the work that gets done, we put numbers up here, but it does take, staff time, significant staff time from the city side, and then the work that we do working with staff, and then, some of the advocacy work that, the council and mayor has done, coming back to DC, meeting with folks. We have on there FEMA, the U.S. Corps of Engineers. I know the mayor met with the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, which does authorize the word of bill. And then the delegation. So there is significant outreach that happens over the course of the year to get to this point in the process. I'll say next slide. So I'll turn it over to Chuck at this point to kind of go over some of the work with FEMA and then other opportunities.
Thank you. Excuse me. So in addition to all of the work with the delegation and with the headquarters offices, we're also looking at all of the various funding opportunities that kind of come up throughout any year on their cycle. So as these come up, the idea is to evaluate them, compare them with the city projects that we're seeking funding to support, and trying to make sure that we can match those up and identify good fits for those funding applications. These are some of the examples that we've been working with over this past year. The first one was with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities project development. One of the good things that we've had is an opportunity to pursue direct technical assistance. That was an application process the city did apply for and was successful in getting accepted into that program, which brings a lot of additional staff from FEMA and their contractors to bear on evaluating a project and helping move that application process forward. So that's been monthly and bi-weekly meetings for quite a while now with FEMA Region 6 and the state emergency management staff as well. We've also looked at the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart programs. There's a lot of a suite of applications of funding opportunities there for water efficiency, for drought resiliency, all those programs as well. And then as well as the Economic Development Agency Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance programs. These are programs to support public works projects that have an economic benefit within a given community, and using those factors to identify a project or to work with an application, as opposed to like with a FEMA application, which is more disaster based and recovering from disaster. So there's a broad range of funding sources that are out there, and these are some of the ones that we worked on in this past year. So actually, before we go into sort of the 2025 scope and FY26 scope, I wanted to go back a little bit on the Water Resources Development Act authorization, and it's just that. It's an authorization bill that doesn't, it requires appropriations to get allocated towards whatever projects we put forward, but it really gives the city its own account within that program. So, unless Congress removes that authorization, you'll have it until it does get removed, and then so in future years you would request funding against that authorization. So that really does give the city and utility another account, if you will, to go after funding for projects that are authorized under that authority. So there's I think under the language there is water, wastewater, and water supply that are authorized under that provision. So I just wanted to clear that up. It wasn't, meant to. I didn't mean to try to sell it as like a $30 million check's coming to Stillwater tomorrow.
So looking forward, we'll continue to work with the city, the utility, and FEMA to finalize an application for BRIC, finalize the FY25 appropriations and the WRDA bill. Again, the WRDA bill probably has a better shot of getting done this year. I'd say the 25 appropriations are looking a little bit more like I wouldn't be surprised if there was another continuing resolution into March or sometime early next year. So so we'll continue to watch that and work with you all on getting that finalized. Developing the next set of requests for FY26 projects. So we're going to be having conversations with staff over the next few months and you all to put together a list of requests. Continue outreach with federal agencies and Congress. There'll be, regardless of what happens tomorrow, there's going to be new folks in the administration at the agency level. There'll be certainly some turnover on the Hill. So for better or worse, we sort of start over in some regards. Re-educating folks about the project and its benefits. And then, monitoring, as Chuck just talked about, some of the new funding opportunities that will come up. And I think that questions.
Trustees, questions?
I just want to say that in terms of return on investment, this is some of the best money we spend. And I appreciate what you do for our community.
Well, I thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. And again, I think I've said this before. It's a team sport. We do what we can do, and then you have good staff back here, and obviously the work that you all put in to get us to this point. So thank you.
I will say that I've visited DC usually a couple times a year the last couple of years, and Kyriakis has dragged me around to every possible federal office that we could talk to, and has had been prepared, has prepared that staff so that when we walk into the office, they know what we're there for. They're ready to go, hear the pitch, and I agree with Trustee Clark that certainly the word authorization, the BRIC program, all that sort of stuff would not be something that we probably would have been on the board to be looking at without the help of MMO. So it's been a good relationship and a very fruitful one for the community.
Thank you, Mayor.
Christy, do you have a recommendation for us on the item? Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A motion to approve extension agreement number 2 with MMO Partners for federal advocacy services in the amount of $79,200. Approve associated budget amendment and authorize the general manager to sign related documents.
Trustees,
I move approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve the item. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that recommendation is approved. Any reports from the officers of the board? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the SUA. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, Stillwater Utilities Authority is now adjourned.